Hello, parents and teachers who may be watching. Welcome to Creating Math Ahas for Parents. I'm Dr. Sandy Atkins, and I think it's easy for us to think about ways that we help children learn the language of word problems when they're actually doing a story problem or a word problem. But in this video, I'd like us to think of ways that we can help your child develop the language of word problems when they're even practicing computation. So let's just look at each of the different operations. I'm going to use the term expression and the term equation. Equation is when we have the equal sign. So as we keep going, if you hear expression, it'll just be something like 25 plus 13. But if I do something like x plus 3 equals 5, a number plus 3 equals 5, we have an equation, okay? So think about the meaning of addition. Addition is about joining and putting together, combining, and part total. And the nice thing is when we understand that's the meaning of addition, we're going to see that type of language in the story problems, and we're actually going to see that help us right up into high school mathematics. Now, let's look at a simple expression. 25 plus 13. Now, if I read it as 25 plus 13, I've read each symbol. I've read them correctly. There's nothing wrong with that. But we don't tend to see a plus word in a story problem. The other thing that we know is quite hard for children is to come up with the equation that goes with the story. So think about helping your child when they see symbols like this, whether it's simple or more complex, to read it as 25 put together with 13, 25 joined with 13, 25 combined with 13. You see, by just reading those words, when you see a plus sign, we're developing the language of word problems when they're doing computation. Again, mathematically, there's nothing wrong with the word plus, but that keeps our focus on the symbols and doesn't help us bridge to story problems. Now, let's think about multiplication. Now, normally we'd go addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, but I want to look at multiplication next because it's also about combining and joining, except in this case, we're combining equal groups or equal rows. We also see multiplication when we're talking about area. We see it in multiplicative comparisons. And then we also have that combining equal distances. So think about this expression. I can read it as 6 groups of 13. Think of the middle imagery and the story problems that could be associated with that. 6 rows of 13, 6 jumps of 13, a rectangle that's 6 by 13, or 6 times as many as 13. See, there's your multiplicative comparison. All of those are ways that I can read these symbols. But again, I'm trying to make a strong connection between symbols and language so that when they get to story problems and hear words like times as many, or they think about groups of combining equal groups and equal jumps and equal rows, this type of symbolism comes to mind. So they'll have an easier time writing those equations. Now let's look at subtraction. Subtraction is about removal or takeaway, but it's also comparisons. So again, those understandings of subtraction help us with the language. I could read this as 25 remove 13 or 25 take away 13. That's how we typically learn subtraction at a young age, right? But I could also think of comparison. How many more than 13 is 25? 25 is how many more than 13? How many fewer than 25 is 13? 13 is how many fewer than 25? Now, do you notice I don't have to read the symbols left to right here? When I'm doing that comparison language, sometimes I started with 13. And that is sometimes difficult for children to understand, so we need lots of practice. The more practice we get with the symbol reading, the better. Or using this language when we're symbol reading, the better. And then division. Like subtraction, it's about separating, it's about removing, but it has to be equal groups or equal rows. So we can separate into equal groups equal distances, equal rows. We can remove equal groups, rows, distances, or it could be finding the missing side length when we're looking at area where we know the area and we know one side, but we're trying to find the other. It could also find within multiplicative comparison, you're trying to find the factor you're multiplying by, right? How many times as many as 13 is 78? See? So thinking about that language. Now, in this particular expression, I could read this as 250 separate into 5 equal groups, separate into 5 equal rows, separate into 5 equal jumps. So I can separate. I could say, well, 5 by what gives me 250, an area of 250. So I can use that area. 5 times as many as what number is 250? So using the language when I'm reading the symbol, when I'm computing, builds the language of the story problems. So with addition, we use languages like join, combine, put together. We use remove, take away, more than, fewer than. You might want to use less than, but the fewer than will work quite nicely for subtraction also. We can do groups of, rows of, by, times as many, jumps of with multiplication. And then with division, we can separate into however many equal groups or remove that number of equal groups. Or we also can think about it as a measurement idea. How many 5s are in 250? So again, how many 5s will we be able to remove out of 250? Think about dozens of eggs. If I have 48 eggs, how many cartons can I fill? How many 12s can I pull off? Now, this language isn't reserved for these simple expressions, right? I could use this for fractions. See, think about these fractions. 2 3/5 put together with 3 1/5. 5 3/5 remove 3 1/5. How many more than 3 1/5 is 5 3/5? And sometimes you'll see that distance being looked at on a number line, right? How many more? We're adding up, we're adding on to get to that. 2 groups of 3 1/5 or 2 by 3 1/5. Okay. How about 2 3/5 separate into 5 equal groups? Or how many 1/5 would be 2 3/5 and 2 3/5? The way I read it, if I'm reading it using this conceptual language, I'm building imagery, but I'm also building the language of the word problems. Now, I hope this video was helpful. There is much more information about language and developing that language in a book called Creating a Language Rich Math Class. You can see that link in the description below. But again, if you found this helpful, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. It's free. Share with others that might find it helpful. Click on the notifications bell so you don't miss future videos. I'll also leave a link in the playlist for word problem playlists so that you can see the other videos that I've done on that. Thanks so much for watching.